Hi, everyone. Liz Collin here. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Liz Collin Reports. It's a place where we will tackle some tough Minnesota topics, hear from newsmakers about things you need to know, and bring some voices to the table that are typically set aside or silenced for pushing back against the popular narrative. Meaningful Minnesota conversations. We're talking to our guest today away from our studio, so just a programming note, but she is a woman who made news when she became the victim of a home invasion in Minneapolis in December. Ever since, she's been on a mission to amplify the voices of crime victims and hold elected officials accountable through a new group called Safe Streets Now for a Better Tomorrow. Julie Wicklund, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Liz. Thanks for having me.
We want to begin by sharing your personal story. So explain what happened to you and your daughter. It was a Sunday afternoon in December.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I had just come home from the grocery store and my garage is attached to my home. Came in through my garage and pressed the button to close the garage door as I walked in the house. And unbeknownst to me, there was a leaf dangling on my garage door, so it didn't go all the way down. And I came into my home and started putting things together for lunch with my daughter. And about 5 to 8 minutes later, while we were having lunch, a potentially juvenile came into our home, late teens, early 20s individual, pointing a gun at us. It happened so fast, just like all of the people say. It seemed surreal that there was a person standing in our kitchen holding a gun and telling us not to look at him. He wasn't wearing a mask, though. And that, give me your car keys. Where are your keys? Give me your car keys. So really the intent was to steal our car. And later I learned when I went back into my car that they had gone through my car to see if they could, just steal the car out of our garage door, out of our garage. And so while we were in this situation, my daughter kind of moved into like the room next door and we were both kind of, shocked and turned away from the person and, started, making sounds. And, obviously we were concerned and worried, and our dog kind of became alerted to that and became mixed in and actually attacked the individual who came into our home and kind of created this scuffle. And the individual said, get control of your dog, or I'm going to shoot your dog. I'm going to kill your dog. And I just started screaming. It was just beyond my control. My body just kind of went into mode of like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what else I can do. My daughter actually went over and tried to get control of our dog, was able to kind of get him off of the individual. And during this kind of skirmish, and I think with me screaming and with everything going on, my son then heard from upstairs and started coming down the stairs, but then heard the individual again, like yelling at us, where are my keys? Give me your keys. So he went back upstairs, locked himself in the bathroom and called 911. And I think then this individual, again, who was by himself, which is a little bit unusual in these situations. Usually there's, more than one. I think he just started realizing this wasn't quite going the way he intended, to be kind of in and out quickly, and decided to just grab my purse and my phone and my computer that was sitting, out there in front of us, not realizing that actually my keys were in my purse to my car. And so he walked back out through the garage and got into his car and left. And the police arrived, I would say 4 or 5 minutes later after that.
So he did get away with your purse and some of your belongings.
Yeah. My purse, my computer, and my phone, and, then my wallet and all sorts of things that were in my purse. So it was, like I said, surreal, happened pretty quickly, but terrifying. And how calm this individual was, of course, until my dog got into the mix and kind of like changed things up a little bit.
Well, terrifying for sure. And then you also found that it was just a few days later. I know you live in the Lyndhurst neighborhood, but a few days later, it's likely that this person was responsible for another crime, right?
Right. Through some of my investigative work, I found other victims that week and contacted them, and seemed like the crimes were very similar. And then ultimately, I was contacted by someone who found my credit card in an alley with another woman's purse, who I got in contact with, who was assaulted Wednesday of that week. And then the following Saturday, a woman was involved in a double carjacking, and another one of my credit cards was found in her car that was recovered, over a month after the incident. So, just like what we're hearing from police and other people, there are a small number of individuals responsible for the majority of these crimes, that they're sometimes even committing more than one in a single day. And, using the vehicles from one to go to another. And, in my opinion, are not, selling the vehicles. They're not doing it to make money. They're literally using the vehicles as a vehicle to commit another crime. And many times the people who get their vehicles back, they're, in pretty rough shape in terms of filled with drug paraphernalia and, other things of that nature.
Julie, I know you chose not to remain quiet after this happened to you, not only recounting your story on the news, but starting a large group kind of in a way to fight back. But explain that. Why was that something that you wanted to do? Why was that important to you?
Yeah, thanks. I think everybody obviously responds to trauma in different ways. And for me, doing something about it and being able to bring awareness to the problem and hopefully trying to educate people and amplify the voices of victims is something that kind of is helping me, I think, on my journey, and feeling like I want to make sure that this situation matters. And, this happened to us for a reason, and I'm going to try to turn it into something positive. And so for me, when a woman had posted on a Uptown Crime Facebook page that she really felt like getting victims together to try to bring about change would be an important step in helping to stop this crime surge. So I reached out to her, and she had some other contacts. And so we just started talking and, felt like we kind of had a common cause and a common goal. And I knew I had contacted quite a few victims that were had posted on Nextdoor or other sources around the time of my crime, and contacted them about, would they be interested in also being part of a group to try to do that. And we wanted to have our focus be, ending this surge in violent crime, with a focus on Hennepin County and Minneapolis, and especially seeking better solutions for these juvenile offenders. And really the crux of our group is that, we believe that police need more support in general. And obviously everyone knows that we need more resources in Minneapolis for our police. They're, down in so many numbers, and, they need greater collaboration, abilities. But we also really want to hold, probation officers, judges, prosecutors, and elected officials accountable for the decisions that they're making and the direction that things are going. That we just can't continue to have this surge in crime and have no end in sight and no interruption and no plan for, how that is going to change.
So the group is called Safe Streets Now for a Better Tomorrow. So the title gives it away, but that's your message here, is that this can't wait another day.
Exactly. That, obviously I know that you've spoken with other crime victims, and obviously it's not just crime victims, anyone who knows me, anyone who lives in my neighborhood, and anyone who lives anywhere in Minneapolis. This is such a huge issue beyond Minneapolis and Hennepin County. It's moved on to the suburbs. And, we need public safety to be a number one priority. And we need to know what the plans are. We need to know that there is a plan for action and, where that is going. And I think many people just feel like, especially with what's going on with the election coming up and, unfortunately with our House and Senate being divided, that nothing is going to happen in terms of legislation or, planning. And, it's an almost insurmountable task in terms of trying to get more police, but there are ways, to do it. And that's what we're trying to help with.
And so you really set off on this journey to better understand the system with what is going on. And I think it's interesting, you're kind of attacking this from a different angle in the fact that you're a scientist in a way, right? You were working on the pandemic with the Minnesota Department of Health, and you're kind of going about this now the same way. You said going from one pandemic now to the next.
Sure. Yeah, I'm an epidemiologist. I had gone back to work to help with the pandemic. I worked at the Minnesota Department of Health years ago. And when COVID reared its head, I reached out to my old coworkers to find out if there was a way that I could help. And so, and just like with the pandemic of COVID, just like with crime, there's a lot of intricacies, a lot of factors. And so I was helping out with that on the school and childcare team. And I was really glad to be involved and to be able to be using my skills. But then when the home invasion happened and I really wanted to be able to put more resources into advocacy work for that. And just, like you said, found a lot of similarities that, there's the public health approach to violence and seeing it as a public health problem, is also an important lens to look at this with. And being an epidemiologist, I mean, we kind of call ourselves disease detectives. And that's kind of the way I was approaching, what happened to us and making a line list of other people and other events that happened around the same time to try to figure out, are these related? Am I related to this crime, that crime? Like, looking at the different factors and, trying to see, again, what can be done and how to learn more about it. And trying to do both of those at the same time, just became a little bit overwhelming. And so I decided it was time to kind of step back from that work. And especially because that work also has, had a different public health approach in terms of the public having misinformation and different things like that too, which was, an interesting dilemma to be in when there were times where, people thought of me as a respected, trusted public health person, but yet the misinformation in the media going on out there, caused, so many other issues. So there were just a lot of parallels with the two situations going on.
Let's talk about probation and light sentences in Minnesota. The Council of State Governments wrote in a recent report that Minnesota has one of the lowest incarceration rates in the country, instead relying heavily on community supervision. Minnesota has the nation's fifth highest rate of people on probation, with 2 in every 100 adults in the state on probation as of 2018. But despite that, more than 60% of prison admissions are due to supervision violations. So this is part of the research and this fact-finding mission that you're on, Julie.
Absolutely.
To better understand that system and perhaps make changes.
Yeah, it was interesting because a lot of these this these groups or this work was being done right around the time that our home invasion happened. So a couple of things were happening at the same time. The Sentencing Guidelines Committee had just started meeting, and they were looking at changing a point to be that if someone committed a crime while on probation, they would not end up getting additional time. They would just end up obviously going back to jail. And so we became involved in that effort to, and members of our group actually testified before the Sentencing Guidelines Committee that we did not believe that persons who committed violent felonies should be allowed to not have, that happen. And so did many, many other people. The word got out, and obviously law enforcement and other people did not feel like this was sending the right message at a time when we had surging crime, to say that people wouldn't get, additional time onto their sentence if they committed a crime while on probation. So that was one initiative that many people in our group testified on, and kind of flung us into kind of the arena and kind of learning more about the system at the same time. Likewise, the Justice Reinvestment Task Force had just started meeting on the very issues that you were talking about, the fact that we have, this low incarceration rate, which means we have a very high rate of people who are instead on probation. And that, like you said, that more than 60% of prison admissions are due to supervision failures. And so this group started meeting to try to understand, where the problems were and what was lacking. And, our group was kind of doing similar things. And so contacted people who were on that committee. And through that, ended up learning more again about our system and trying to understand, the factors contributing to this. And was able to have conversations with Commissioner Schnell from the Department of Corrections, make connections with other representatives like Representative Novotny and Representative Marty. And also, then went on to talk to like our local representatives and try to make them understand that, the factors are that, obviously we need more resources, and meeting with our county commissioners to try to highlight that as well. And then the meeting happened at Edina Country Club when the individuals who were involved in a carjacking there, and then, met more representatives like Representative Adelson there, who is doing a lot of work on public safety, and, heard from mayors like Mayor Hovland, who was, standing up for his community and saying, this is not going to be tolerated. And here's what we're going to do about it. And really trying to organize the mayors in the surrounding suburbs to look at these factors and try to figure out, what more can be done. And really it's about, more resources and not just obviously throwing money in terms of resources at the problem, but actually, looking at it, like I said, as, a public health approach. There's the kinds of things that we can work on now, and then for short-term and long-term solutions. And so, of course, our group is trying to look at the now, but obviously understanding we can't just, only look at the now. We also have to look at what's going on, upstream as well. But in terms of the now problem, we have got to make sure that our city is communicating better with us about where they're at in terms of police efforts, of getting more police on the force, and in terms of, where they are in the police chief search, where they are on their public safety plan. And we just feel like, that is not being communicated well.
And on that point, I know you've requested a meeting with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and the city is under a court order to hire nearly 200 officers by this summer, but you're also asking people to get involved with this process.
Right. I mean, they are under a court order to have fully funded police force at 730 officers by the end of May. And obviously, we know that that's not going to happen, but we want to know what they're doing to help get other contracts in place. We've spoken with Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, who have said that if they were provided more funding, they could help provide more focused enforcement and proactive policing. We need that in the hot spots. We have reached out to persons on the north side and all over Minneapolis. Everyone agrees that we need to have more police, especially in these hotspot areas. I know that one of the approaches that Minneapolis is taking is with this Office of Violence Prevention, with these violent interrupters. And certainly some of those programs are being effective, but I also know that there's a lot of controversy about those programs, and that there are people who aren't, they don't feel like they're being transparent and accountable and evaluated for how they're actually, are they really reducing violence? What are the metrics that they're looking at? Again, we have to have targeted interventions, and these groups, it's not clear, especially from, the reports that we've heard, whether or not these groups are really doing what they say they're going to do, and really creating relationships and really making sure that, there is an evaluation of these programs.
And you mentioned before that support for law enforcement is part of this strategy, which I think is brave of you to even say so, but that would really require standing up to these groups against police. They're well-funded, they're much louder. How do you plan to counter that?
Right. And, a great point, Liz, because I think, the pendulum swung very, very far with what happened with the murder of George Floyd in our city. And rightfully so, that there needs to be reform. Nobody will argue with that there needs to be, both hand in hand. But I think the problem is that, like you said, the people who want to eliminate the police, defund the police, are a much louder, much more organized voice. And it kind of is that way on both ends of the spectrum, right? That the people in the middle who are okay, just kind of floating along, the people in the center are harder to kind of ring the bell on, that, we have let things go, and that we're in a position now where we do not have, the people do not feel like, law enforcement needs our support, and we can't just throw money at the problem. And there needs to be kind of a whole change in the dynamic to say that we need to fund the police, and we need to, show that we believe in what they're doing and respect them, and of course hold them accountable for what they're doing. But it's a tough job, we all know that, but we certainly know that they are needed, and they're needed in numbers so that they can do that community policing, and they can have those relationships, and they could bring back those programs around truancy and curfew that MPD used to have so that, they can help, especially with the juvenile offender problem. And many years ago, when we were having another surge in crime, especially in juvenile crime, our mayor, R.T. Ryback, at the time put together a blueprint for action, which really was looking at this problem as a public health approach. And that we really need to have all the people on board. And we really need to have police being one of those factors, and being in the community and being in these hot spots and doing that community policing on all these levels. I mean, I don't think there's a police officer out there for the last 2 years that has had anything to do with truancy, or curfew, because they just don't have time. But those are like the upstream things that have to be addressed, and have to be part of the community, so that, we can, stop this surge in crime that's going on.
What's next for you, Julie? I know you're planning an in-person town hall forum, and again, trying to get in front of the mayor, but talk about the group's plans moving forward.
Well, like I said, we have been doing a lot of meeting with people to try to understand the different factors. And our most recent meeting with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, each time we learn a different direction, and again, one of the things that we're trying to focus on is what can be done now, because obviously we victims don't want to see this happening to one more person. We don't want to see one more is too many. The trauma that we are left with is just at an unacceptable situation. And that's what we're trying to say when we meet with elected officials, is that we need a plan. We need to have a plan for how this is going to be interrupted. We need Fry, especially, to be more transparent and to be more communicative. I don't know if the statistics on mayors in our size city, but ours does not have a public information officer. And we really feel like that's lacking, to have that point person that can be communicating a plan and where we're at in the plan. Because we often hear Mayor Fry saying he has a plan, but we don't know the details of it. And certainly one of the most important details right now is the police chief search. What search firm has he hired? What are the search criteria? Who, developed these criteria, and who's going to make the choice? And what's the timeline for the hire? Because that's really going to set the stage for everything else. Again, that we know is the issue. And so that's one of the things that we are hoping to meet with the mayor about. And then the public safety improvement plan, truly, like, we can't just keep having meetings where we hear about these horrific statistics, and we are the statistics, and then not have, a plan with measurable criteria, for how it's going to be implemented and how they're going to get more police officers, whether that be in contracts with Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, whether that be getting more federal support from, BCA, well, BCA is local, but ATF or FBI. We need to understand what's happening, because the narrative out there right now to the public and all the criminals is that we do not have enough police. So we need that narrative to be changed and updated. And that's one of the things that we are going to be pushing for. And to say, how are we going to know when we're safer? What is the metrics? And that, again, that the support has to be out there, that the mayor, the governor, that all of our elected officials have to come out and say, we need police, that police especially in these hotspots, are what is needed to tamp down this crime wave and to get control of it. But certainly there are things that also have to be happening at the same time, like what I was talking about with the public health approach, with the programs like RT Ryback had for the Blueprint for Action that looked at, providing different opportunities, targeted interventions to youth, but also, when they are violent criminals, having places where people can go. And right now, our Hennepin Homeschool was closed, the Totem Town was closed, and people from all over Minneapolis that we've talked to have all said, we need to have facilities. And our prosecutors say that too, that are local and that are culturally appropriate and have the ability to provide these people treatment and get them job skills. And so, HEALS 2.0 is something that is a potential plan that is looking at these things. It was something, like I said, the RT Ryback plan and others have been helpful in the past. So, again, we are going to try to keep shining a light on the things that they are doing and also trying to shine a light when nothing is happening. And so our group is, trying to do that and trying to share information with action items. So when something isn't happening, or if there are bills in the legislature that we think need support, we reach out to our group to provide emails, calls, different things like that to persons on the Public Safety Committee. And like I said, we're also really trying to reach out to groups who are also doing this work on the north side. We participated in rallies with them to try to find out how can we also amplify their voices, because we are all in this together. We are only as healthy of a city as our most unhealthy part. And right now, our whole city is unhealthy. And certainly there are areas that are having more crime than others. And we need to do everything we can to get the resources to those areas. And we can't stop. We can't be complacent, and we can't just adjourn a meeting and allow for nothing to be happening in the meantime.
If people are interested in joining your cause, where can they go?
Well, right now we do have the Facebook page called Safe Streets for a Better Tomorrow. If people aren't Facebook users, they can email to safestreetsnowmn@gmail.com, safestreetsnowmn@gmail.com to get on our email list. And, we're new. We're trying to, bring together people who agree that this needs to be a top priority, and how we can do that in a way to create action items. And, we know the crime is happening. We can't just sit here and complain about it. We have to figure out a way to put pressure and shine light on the areas that need it. And, holding our elected officials accountable, and, our especially the judges who, have a lot of discretion in this area too. So come to our Facebook page, send an email to us, and especially if you're a victim, to reach out to us as we are really trying to bring victims together. And, that's been a process that I've been working on, so that, again, that especially can amplify victims' voices and provide a place for support, because, all of us have been through something that no one else can understand. And sometimes, in some ways it helps, but it also, infuriates us that we keep adding more victims, unfortunately, to our group. In closing, wanted to kind of highlight some of the most important points, and really the number one crucial thing that, our group is working on with with our title, even of our group, Safe Streets Now for a Better Tomorrow, is that the crime situation that we are in is an emergency, truly an emergency, and an urgent attention is needed to this. And so it really needs to be treated that way by all officials in order to get the help that's needed. And this current system, criminal justice system that we have, is just not working for victims or the perpetrators. And we really need our entire community to come together. And everyone should be just as outraged by the constant gunfire and violence, that is occurring every night, as people are outraged about the police shootings. That we really need to see that this all matters, and we need to make people understand that the longer this goes on, the more brazen that the crime, becomes, and it escalates, and it just becomes normalized. Like, this level of crime is normal, but it is not. And we have to make sure that our elected officials and others realize that we are in an emergency, and where we're at right now is really an intolerable situation. And people can't just stay back on the sidelines. Everybody needs to get involved and make sure their elected officials and others, hear about that. And then I just want to underscore another way that we can support law enforcement, and really how we're going to attract more law enforcement to our city is that we need to be paying more and putting more pressure on the city to increase salaries. I have heard from our city council that in order to be in the top third of similar sized cities, we would need to increase salaries by 8 to 9%. And, we need to do that and more. And, we've heard Mayor Fry make the statement that he will fire more and pay more, which is not going to attract anyone. I understand what he means by that statement, that of course we need reform and accountability, but the officers we hope to attract need to know that they're supported and, obviously will be paid more. So I just think that those are really the most important points that I want to make here, that we are in an emergency situation, and everybody needs to do whatever they can. Of course, our group is one avenue, and there are others, just to get involved and become more educated and informed. We are trying to be bipartisan in the efforts that we're doing, because public safety affects everyone, and we all need to, get informed and take action to make our city safer, and our county and our state, so that everybody deserves to have that level of safety. So thanks again, Liz, for having me today.
Thank you, Julie, for the important work that you're doing and for joining us today.